good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, as the case may be. This is Professor Kent Lee, and welcome to my high intermediate conversation class. This is sort of a makeup replacement lecture video due to the HIEC holiday, since some of you may be away, or it may be hard for you to attend the regular Zoom lectures. We're going to talk today about word choice issues. This is something that was kind of in something like the second chapter of my book. We kind of skipped over it due to lack of time and because I wanted to save it for this purpose, for a lecture video. We're going to talk about some common word choice problems of East Asian students and other students learning English as a second language. So take a look at these examples. Pause the video for a moment, read these examples, maybe talk to a classmate, a friend, talk to yourself, your dog, with these. Do these sound correct to you? Some of these are pretty obvious, but they are mistakes that maybe lower level students might make. Some of them are still tricky for more intermediate and even lower advanced students. Like college students, quite common for college students. And again, it's not your fault, it's just that your teachers probably never really pointed them out to you before or focused on them. Maybe they didn't know either. So look at these, discuss. Are these correct or not for English? Okay, the first two are quite similar, and probably you recognize that equipment is singular. Furniture is singular. And there's a good reason for this. Can you picture furniture in your mind? No, it's not like a specific object. It's more of a collective noun or group noun or mass noun. It's sort of, in a way, it's kind of like, water. If you just talk about water on the ground, it's a material. Well, furniture and equipment are sort of like this, except that they're more of a stuff, not exactly a material, but sort of stuff, but they're made of different elements. But you can't really picture furniture in your mind unless you picture specific kinds, tables, chairs, desks, bookshelves, but not just one furniture. It's kind of a collective group noun, and it acts like a singular. It's a bit like a material noun. Same thing for equipment. You can't just picture equipment unless you specifically imagine particular kinds of equipment, like a computer or some piece of lab equipment or something like that. Now, next one, faculties. Can we say faculties like this in English? No. Faculty is kind of like furniture. It's a group noun. We are hiring new faculty if you mean several, plural professors, like the university as a whole is trying to hire new faculty. But once you start counting them, you need to use a countable individual noun, such as faculty members, professors, teachers, instructors. In this sense, you can't say faculties. Now, you can use faculty in a different sense. It's more common in British and Australian English and just in general in mainland Europe, in general, where faculty has a totally different, very different meaning, where it refers to a department or a division. So you might speak of the faculty of history, the history faculty, meaning the history department at a, say, a British university. The Spanish faculty, or the faculty of Spanish language and literature, the faculty of European history and things like that, a department or division. That kind of faculties can be counted. This college has 7 faculties under it. But in this, if you're talking about professors or instructors, you should say faculty members, professors, instructors. The same is true for staff. The professors are unhappy, the staff are unhappy, we're hiring new staff. You could say staff members if you need a countable noun. We need 5 new staff members or new employees. Vocabulary is singular. Vocabulary is a collective group noun, sort of like furniture. It refers to like all the words of a language. English has a large vocabulary, a large set of words that make up the English language, or the words that you know in a language. How is your English vocabulary? Oh, it's better than my French vocabulary. I know a lot more words. Now, if you want the countable word, you can say words. So we need to learn a lot of technical vocabulary. Some of the words have a lot of letters, not alphabets. This is different. By the way, I should mention, the one case where you could say vocabularies is if you are talking about different kinds. Like in my head, I have different vocabularies. I've got French vocabulary, I've got English vocabulary, and I've got German vocabulary. Or linguists look at different vocabularies of different languages. But if you're talking about one language, it's vocabulary singular. It's a group, a set of words. Alphabet is sort of a set of things. It is countable. You can talk about alphabets, but in this case, the speaker is really referring to letters. A, B, C, those are letters. Those are not alphabets. An alphabet is a set of letters. Like the Latin alphabet is a set of 26 or so letters. That is the Latin alphabet. There are 26 letters. This word has a lot of letters that are hard to pronounce, or a lot of sounds that are hard to pronounce. You have different alphabets: the Latin alphabet, the Greek alphabet, the Korean alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet for Russian, and so on. Russian and other languages. If you're talking about letters, you mean letters of a word, letters of the alphabet, Latin letters. And you talk about capital or big letters, or uppercase letters, and then small or lowercase letters, by the way. And finally, number 5, researches. We don't say researches. It's research as kind of a mass noun. We do a lot of research, or if you want to countable, research studies or research reports, usually studies. We've published a lot of studies. We've conducted many studies this year in our laboratory. So some nouns that are singular like this: equipment, faculty, furniture, usually homework. Now I've heard some, I guess maybe British speakers say homeworks. So maybe that's British English, but in American English it's more of a collective or mass type noun, more of a stuff. So we say homework assignments or exercises or something like that, and homework is just a mass, like, oh, the teacher gives us too much homework or too many assignments. Literature, if you're talking about like, I read a lot of literature, I love British literature, and such. Now how about this one? Take a look at this sentence. Would you say the data is convincing or the data are convincing? Pause, think about this for a moment. Which is right? Okay, I've maybe tricked you because technically both are correct. You may hear both. It's just that there's a difference in the formality level or the context. Most people would say that data is convincing. They think of data as kind of general stuff, kind of like furniture that can be treated as a singular noun. And that's just more informal. It's not wrong, it's just more informal. But data is actually the plural, a Latin plural. It's from Latin. There is a singular Latin datum, like a piece of data, a piece of information, but it's rare to use datum in English. So most people just don't know that data technically would be plural. They treat it as a singular, and again, that's okay in informal English. Now in formal academic English, we usually treat it as a plural because it is a Latin plural. It refers to like a bunch of pieces of information. The data are convincing. So you would mainly hear that said by a person who probably went to graduate school and has studied research methods or has studied statistics or how to do experiments and how to analyze data. That kind of person would likely say the data are convincing. They would say the data are. They would treat it as a plural. So when you hear somebody say that, you can tell they've probably did advanced studies in science or social sciences. Now, what about these differences? I'll give you a hint. These differ between British and American. Which ones sound natural to you? Take a minute and think about these. Okay, as an American, I would treat these as singular nouns. They are singular kind of things. The team has been training, the government has announced something. The family is a fundamental unit. But in British English, Britain, Australia, maybe Canadian, I'm not sure, you would treat these as plural because logically they are plural. A team is a group of players. And so in British English, they say the team have been training, the government have announced, the family are the fundamental unit of society. It's not wrong, it sounds different to me, definitely. I always kind of notice it when I'm listening to British English. It still stands out to me. I'm not totally used to it, but I'm used to hearing it. And so don't think it's wrong, it's just British and it's totally fine. And it's logical. Now take a look at these sentences. These are sentences that might be uttered by an East Asian learner of English. Do these sound okay? We'll do it next week. We don't really say that. That's definitely like Korean English or Chinese English. We will do it in 2 weeks, you could say that, or the week after next. And similarly, the day after tomorrow, or in 2 days from now. And we don't say we did it last week, but we did it 2 weeks ago, the week before last, and 2. We have a promise for 6 p.m. tonight. If it's something you've set a time for, like you're meeting somebody at a certain time, either friends or your doctor or professor, that's an appointment. An appointment is not a promise. So Koreans think of 약속, and they translate it as promise, but if it's like promise just sounds funny in English for this, it's an appointment. Or if it's like a boyfriend or girlfriend, you're going out tonight, then you could say, wait, I have a date tonight. Some of our friends are going out to play after the exam. So I know in Korean and other Asian languages, you might say play in the English sense of like hanging out. Maybe in kind of colloquial English, we say we're hanging out. I'm hanging out with my friends, not play. Play is like what children do. Children go play on the playground. If you're a grown-up, you would say we're going to hang out, we're going to go do something together, we're going to go have fun or whatever. And if you're talking about adults, you don't say boys and girls. Especially boys sounds awkward. It's guys and ladies. Some people say girls, but in a professional or academic context, it's kind of not very good to refer to women as girls. And if one of them is a feminist, she will definitely be upset because it's kind of like putting them down, treating them like children, women or ladies, female friends, female classmates or something. So again, it's not unusual in colloquial English to refer to adult females as girls, but it can be rude. It's kind of sexist, so Don't refer to adult guys as boys, and don't refer to adult females, friends as girls, unless you want them to slap you. Next, the body parts of the essay. Part has been borrowed from English into Korean, and it's used a lot in Korean. But in English, it's kind of a very general term, kind of vague. And in this context, you want to use something more specific, because body parts sounds like something from CSI. Oh, there's an arm over there on the ground, and oh, there's his leg. No, we would say body sections or body paragraphs of an essay. And then for this part of society sounds kind of vague. It doesn't sound very educated using such a vague word. Maybe this segment or sector or element or aspect of society needs attention. Next one, take a look at these. Are these the same? Because I hear Asian students confusing these two words. Okay. I think sometimes, I'll hear a Korean or Chinese person say, stop blaming me when I'm not blaming you, I'm just critiquing or criticizing you. There's a difference. To critique or to criticize is to point out a problem, to point out something wrong, but it's not necessarily judgmental, not judging you. Blaming is more like saying it's your fault. It's about assigning blame or guilt or responsibility. So it's one thing to criticize a mistake in like your homework, just to point out a problem. I'm pointing out problems. That's maybe critiquing or even criticizing, but it's not blaming you. It's not saying it's your fault or you're dumb. It's you're guilty or anything. It's different. Blaming is about saying you're guilty, you're wrong, you did wrong, or you deliberately did something bad or dumb. All right, this next section is a little tricky for a lot of people, not just East Asian students. By and until. Because English is the only language I know that has these two kind of words used together like this. In other languages, there's just one word for this. English has this unique distinction. Take a look at these and decide, are these right? Are these okay? What's the difference between by and until? Okay, if your parents say you should be home until 11 p.m., that would sound very strange. Because that means you should be at home, and then at 11 p.m. you need to go out. Because until in English refers to when something stops. When an action stops, or when a state of being stops, ends. So if they say you should be home until 11, then at 11 o'clock they kick you out and go sleep on the street. That's strange. So by is the standard term for when something should happen. An appointment, a deadline, an expected time, a time at which something is expected, like an appointment or a deadline, especially deadline. So here it's a deadline. You should be home by 11 p.m. Deadline. Go out, but be home by 11 p.m. Deadline. That's when you should be home. Give me the assignment until Monday just sounds strange, like I'm going to be giving the assignment to you repeatedly and then Monday I stop. That doesn't really make sense. Give me the assignment by Monday because as a teacher I'm telling you this is a deadline by Monday. I expect to be married until my mid-30s. That just sounds weird. Like you're going to get married now, then in your mid-30s you're going to divorce. You're going to stop being married. Until means when something stops. You should say by my mid-30s. That's like when you expect something to happen, sort of an approximate deadline or expectation. Look at these sentences here now for a minute. What's the difference? Okay, number one is what we had before. Remain single until my mid-30s, and then the state of being single will stop in the mid-30s, expectedly, then get married. The research study should be finished by this February, deadline. We will be working on it until February, so working stops in February, and it's supposed to be completed by February. We expect to know the results by mid-March. It takes time to analyze the data. By mid-March, we should know the results of the experiment or the research. That's when you expect something, or a deadline. Number 3, I need to be at work by 9 a.m. Deadline. I need to arrive there before 9 a.m. for the meeting. We have to stay all day until the boss leaves, especially in East Asian culture. Workers stay until the boss leaves. When the boss leaves, then you can go. So we stay until the boss leaves. Our staying ends whenever the boss leaves. We will wait home until the storm passes. So we will be at home until, and our remaining confined at home continues until the time when the storm passes. It stops. Our remaining at home stops when the storm passes. So again, very important. By is for deadlines or expected times. Until refers to when something stops, when something ceases to be. You're doing something until a certain time. You or you're in a state like you're asleep until 7 a.m. That's when something stops. Next, take a look at these expressions. Are these okay in formal contexts? We're talking about formality. Some of these might be okay. In some contexts, would they be okay in a formal academic setting? Okay, good and bad, what do those mean? What is good? They're very vague terms, and it might be okay as kind of a shorthand, like in a conversation. Oh, that was really good. But if you're maybe doing something more formal, like a business presentation or a class paper, you want something that's more specific. What does good mean or bad mean? I mean, they have, what does good mean? If you look it up in a thesaurus, a dictionary of synonyms, it could have lots of meanings depending on the context. What is good? Well, beneficial, helpful, suitable, adaptable, successful, etc. You can think of dozens and dozens of words that have more specific meanings than good. And the same for bad. What is bad? Like negative, ill-suited, inappropriate, inadequate, etc., etc. You can think of lots of words. You know, go to a thesaurus, like thesaurus.com, for synonyms. Find better words. Same thing for big and huge. These sound really, especially huge, sounds really slangy or colloquial. Large, expansive, excessive, or something like that. Kind of is sort of, in the singular, or kind of like an adverb, like sort of or somewhat. He's kind of crazy. Now that's very informal. So to be more formal, he's slightly crazy, he's slightly insane, somewhat insane. Now the plural is kind of more clear, kinds of, sorts of, as in types of. But in the singular, they often mean slightly or somewhat. And in a more formal context, it's better to say slightly, somewhat, a little, maybe. A lot of or lots of, very informal, kind of colloquial, better to say a large amount of, many, numerous, various, something like that. Nowadays, might work, or recently, sometimes recently sounds better. People, in some contexts, people might be vague, and it might be better to use a more specific noun. What kind of people are you talking about? Canadians, Australians, voters, participants in our experiment, citizens, voters, male Koreans, female Mexicans? I mean, what kind of people are you talking about in this context? Usually you want to be more specific. Also, thing and stuff, things, kind of vague, often colloquial or very, very informal, and it's better to use a more specific word instead of thing, item, entity, or just use a specific noun instead, like whatever you're talking about, whether it's computers or pencils or cameras or phones or whatever. Just use a specific noun that kind of communicates more content, shows more thoughtfulness. There are some other issues, a few more issues in the unit in the book, but I'm going to save them for a later time, probably. Something that might go along with maybe a later unit in the course. So that deals with more gender issues in language. Very important, and I would like to spend a bit more time on it later on. So these are just some basic word choice issues and formality issues to pay attention to. Also a little bit of British and American difference, and there's a lot more I could say about that, but we don't have time. There are lots of YouTube videos that go more into the differences between British and American English. Whichever one you use is fine. Like in my classes, I don't mind if you use British or American, either way is fine. Just be consistent, use one or the other when you're doing an assignment or something. It'll sound weird if you mix them kind of in an odd way. Go with one or the other. So these are some tips to be more formal, like in a formal class presentation, maybe a business meeting, or in college writing or professional writing, which you might do someday. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.